Hey guys, how's it going? It's Brandon with Singletons here, finally back with another video after like 8 months away. It's crazy, but I'm gonna make it up to you today with a super sweet list. This is a personal favorite of mine. This is a $50 budget commander deck led by Crick, son of Yawgmoth. And of course, we are good little Phyrexians here at Singletons, so we do have an INFECT package to spice things up. Let's get to it. Crick, son of Yawgmoth is 4 generic and 3 Phyrexian black mana for a 2/2 legendary Phyrexian horror minion with lifelink. He also says that for each black symbol and a cost, you may pay 2 life instead of that mana, and whenever you cast a black spell, put a 1/1 counter on Crick. That is a mouthful, so let's break it down piece by piece. First, the mana cost. That symbol that shows up 3 times in the mana cost denotes Phyrexian mana, and the symbol being used on a black circle makes it Phyrexian black mana. The reminder text lets us know that we can pay for Phyrexian black mana using either a regular black mana or by paying 2 life. Phyrexian mana can come in any color, but black is all that matters to us right now, and in our case it means that Crick can cost as much as 4 black, or as little as just 4 mana and 6 life on the first cast. Yeah, that's right. This 7 mana powerhouse can be cast on curve on turn 4 or earlier with mana ramp. This is the power of Phyrexia. A little life is a small price to pay for playing your cards way earlier than normal. And I'm talking all of your cards, because Crick's power is in his second ability. He turns all of the black mana symbols on all of your cards into Phyrexian mana, so just pay a little life and ignore them all. All of your cards only cost generic mana now. Just let that sink in. But Brandon, I don't want to lose my wave point. Too bad! Your life total is a resource and you will gladly use it for the glory of new Phyrexia. But just to make sure that we have enough life to pay our spells, Crick does have lifelink and he gets bigger for every black spell we cast, which means more damage and more lifelink. One last thing about our commander, his printed creature type just says Horror Minion, but as of Kaldheim, Phyrexian was officially added as a creature type and a lot of cards were errated to have it. This includes Crick, as well as every creature with INFECT. Speaking of which, let's take a look at those cards. If you're unfamiliar with INFECT, it's an ability that modifies how damage is dealt. This creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and to players in the form of poison counters. For creature combat, this means that if a creature blocks something with INFECT and survives, it will walk away smaller because of getting -1/-1 counters, making blocking those creatures a tough choice even when you know the blocker will survive. If a creature with INFECT does not get blocked and hits an opponent directly, that's where the fun starts. Instead of losing life, the hit player will get that many poison counters, and if a player ever gets 10 poison counters, they lose the game. This is why INFECT is so widely loved and hated. It's a lot easier to hit someone for 10 than it is for 40. The creature you've been looking at is Plague Stinger. 1 and a black for a 1/1 Phyrexian insect horror with INFECT and flying to get that precious damage through, and for 1 and a black there's also Flencermite, a 1/1 Phyrexian gremlin with INFECT and lifelink to help pad out our life total. Next are 2 different 1/1 Phyrexian mirror artifacts with INFECT for 2 generic mana. Ichorclaw Mirror gets +2/+2 until end of turn whenever it's blocked, and Plague Mirror taps for a generic mana to ramp you into your other threats. Moving on to Phyrexian Rats for 1 black, we have Ichor Rats, a 2/1 that gives each player a poison counter when it enters play, which is great for getting that first hit off on fresh opponents and combos well with Septic Rats, a 2/2 that gets +1/+1 until end of turn whenever it attacks a player that already has a poison counter. If you need to tear apart someone's hand as well as their spirit, you can play Whispering Spectre. 1 black for a Phyrexian Spectre with flying and INFECT, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you can sacrifice it to make that player discard a card for each poison counter they have. If you need a big beefy girl to get some hits in, Phyrexian Vat Mother will do just that for you. At 2 black for a 4/5 Phyrexian Horror, Vat Mother is our biggest infector. In return for her service, she does give you a poison counter on each of your upkeeps, but if you're playing this deck, you're kind of into it, so it's fine. Corpse Cur is 4 generic mana for a 2/2 Phyrexian Dog, double errata on that one, that will get you back one of your fallen infectors when it dies. And finally, Core Prowler is 4 generic mana for a 2/2 Phyrexian Horror that proliferates when it dies. Proliferate says you choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them, then give each another counter of a kind already there. Surprise, this is really good with INFECT because if anyone already has a poison counter, you can just give them another. You can also increase the -1/-1 counters you've put on opponents' creatures or the +1/+1 counters Crick has put on himself. This ability is so good for INFECT that we might just see it again later in this video. For now though, we're not quite done with INFECT just yet, because we do have a ways to give this ability to a willing creature. Or not so willing creature. Same thing. Tainted Strike is a single black mana for an instant that gives a creature +1/+0 in INFECT, making it a great combat trick to throw in an unblocked creature, especially when your opponents are attacking each other. We also have 2 enchantments that give Infect, Phyrexia for 1 and a black, and Glistening Oil for black. Glistening Oil slowly kills the enchanted creature by putting a -1/-1 counter on it during your upkeep, but whenever the enchantment goes to the graveyard, it comes right back to your hand to use again. Crick is a great target for this one specifically because he can keep getting +1 counters to cancel out the -1 counters. Okay, that's it for Infect, so now we can move on. Oh, look, it's later in the video, so let's talk about a couple Proliferate cards, Contagion Clasp and Throne of Geth. Both are 2 generic mana for artifacts with activated abilities. When Contagion Clasp enters play, it puts a -1/-1 counter on a creature, and then you can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. Throne of Geth can also proliferate if you tap it and sacrifice an artifact. I'll admit this one is a little experimental in the deck, but it's worked out pretty okay for me so far. We have a fair number of artifacts in this deck, some of which are scary enough to get targeted for removal anyway, and in a pinch it can always sacrifice itself. Looking for more ways to increase the number of poison counters opponents are getting? Let's look at some equipment to pump up our creatures and push damage through. Cranial Plating is 2 to cast, 1 to equip to give a creature +1/+0 for each artifact you control, and can be attached to a new creature at instant speed for black as a nice combat trick. Inquisitor's Flail is 2 to cast, 2 to equip, and doubles the damage the equipped creature deals, as well as the damage it takes, so it's pseudo double strike. Lash Writhe is 4 to cast, and Phyrexia black to equip, has Living Weapon, and gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each swamp you control, so whoever gets this equipment is going to be huge. Living Weapon just means that whenever you cast this equipment, you put a 0/0 Phyrexian Germ creature token into play with the equipment already attached to it. Demonic Embrace is actually an enchantment for 1 black that gives the creature +3/+1 and flying, and you can cast it again from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card, so it's just as reusable as an equipment while giving a nice power boost and evasion. Swiftfoot Boots and Whisper Silk Cloak are staple equipments that protect the equipped creature and help push damage through with either haste or unblockable, so of course they're here. And finally, we have a spicy pickup from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, Vorpal Sword. Black to cast, black to equip, this gives the creature +2/+0 and Death Touch. Then for 5 black, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. The cost is a little steep, but it's completely in line with what we want to be doing. Plus, if we have Crick out, this becomes free to cast, free to equip, and 5 to activate, which is just a blowout waiting to happen. That is a lot of life to be spending for one interaction though, so let's add a few dedicated life gain cards to help balance things out. First up, we're in mono black, so of course we have to have our main man Gary. Grey Merchant of Asphodel is 3 black for a 2/4 zombie, and when he enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to your devotion to black, then you gain the total amount of life lost this way. This guy creates some massive life swings every single time he gets played. I have literally never seen a Gary played in Commander that didn't gain 30 to 50 life. And by the way, your devotion to black is the total number of black mana symbols among permanents you control. Gary himself has 2 black symbols in his cost, so he increases your devotion by 2. Phyrexian black mana symbols also count towards your devotion to black, so Crick will add 3 to your devotion as long as he's on the field. Next up is Demon's Horn, a neat little 2-mana artifact that gains us a life every time anyone casts a black spell. Our other 3 cards in this category all have Extort. Extort says whenever you cast a spell, you may pay a black or a white. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. First off, let me clarify that even though these cards have a white mana symbol printed on them, they're still legal in this mono black deck because the symbol is only present in reminder text. Anything printed in reminder text has no effect on a card's color identity. That said, Extort is amazing with Crick out because you can just pay 2 life for the Extort cost, so as long as you have 2 opponents, you'll always gain your life back, and if you have 3 or more opponents, you'll actually gain life every single time you cast a spell. Our 3 Extort creatures are Thrall Parasite, Basilica Screecher, and Pontiff of Blight. Thrall Parasite is a single black for a 1/1 that also has tap, pay 2 life, remove a counter from target non-land permanent. Perfect for getting rid of loyalty counters on Planeswalkers. Basilica Screecher is 1 and a black for a 1/1 with flying, and Pontiff of Blight is 4 black for a 2/7 that gives Extort to all of your other creatures, which is absolutely insane. This is also a good time to point out that Extort can stack, so if you have Thrall Parasite and Pontiff of Blight out at the same time, whenever you cast a spell, you'll be able to Extort 3 times just between those 2 creatures, which is nuts. That is basically going to do it for the core of the strategy. Everything else in the list basically falls under standard categories like card draw or ramp, so I'll quickly go over some notable cards left in the list, but I'm not going to go through each one individually since most of these are not specific to the strategy and I just don't want the video to get too long. Check the description below if you're interested in seeing my exact list. Now let's go over the last few cards. Dead of Winter and Blood on the Snow are both board wipes that rely on using snow mana, so all of our basic lands are snow basics. They've been going around pretty well since Kaldheim, and Dead of Winter is just too good not to build around. Dread Presence and Sir Conrad the Grim both have abilities that reliably ping your opponents, making them great targets for Phyrexia and Glistening Oil. Infect triggers on any kind of damage, not just combat damage, so pinging an opponent for 10 Infect is just as good as swinging. Oubliette is a great reprint that should be a staple in any black deck. When this enchantment is played, it phases out a creature until it leaves play. When a creature is phased out, it's treated like it doesn't exist. The notable thing here is that a creature doesn't ever change zones when it phases, so if you target a commander with this, your opponent doesn't get to choose to put it into their command zone instead. That commander is forced to stay in timeout until Oubliette leaves play. Font of Agonies will get counters on it whenever you pay life as a cost, then you can spend your mountain of counters to mow down opposing creatures. Lastly, we've got a couple neat mana rocks, Everflowing Chalice and Astral Cornucopia. Both of these rocks enter play with a number of charge counters on them based on how much mana you cast them for, then you can tap them for mana equal to how many charge counters they have. Neither are too special on their own, but Proliferate makes them really good since we can cast them for cheap and then increase the number of counters on them, increasing how much mana they make. So that is going to do it for this Crick Infect list. Again, the whole list can be had for just 50 bucks, though I do not count the price of the commander, basic lands, or shipping costs in my totals. If you want to see the full deck list for yourself, you can check it out in the link in the description below, and once you're there, you can also see all of my previous lists, and sometimes the decks I'm currently working on. I hope you guys like this take on Mono Black. Infect is easily my favorite mechanic in Magic, and Crick has been one of my favorite commanders since he came out, so it only made sense for me to put them together at some point. So, do you guys think I missed anything? Do you want me to cover a specific commander? Please let me know any thoughts or suggestions in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see future videos. I've got a lot of ideas that I can hopefully push out pretty soon now. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you all later.